this is John with Supersteer, and today we're going to be installing a rear track bar on a Ford F53 chassis, and the part number is the SS401. In this kit we provide two different brackets, one for the American rear end and one for the metric rear end. So the first thing we need to do is determine which rear end we have in this vehicle. Okay, if we look at these bolts, we'll see either a pattern of lines on there, which is the American size. They're going to be a 3/4 head on them, or you'll see a 10.9 on there, which would indicate a metric. Another easy way to tell is if you hold your bracket up in place, you can see how this one doesn't line up. This one matches up with our 3 holes on the differential. We're also going to need to tie this brake line over a little bit so we have plenty of clearance, we don't have any rub issues, so we can go ahead and do that to start out with. Okay, in the kit we provide some nylon tie straps and some protective tubing for the brake lines. Okay, now that we have the protective tubing on, we're going to go ahead and tie these lines over out of the way. As we're tying these lines up, we want to make sure we still have enough slack for the rear end to bounce. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and remove our 3 bolts on the differential so we can install our axle plate. Here's our 3 American bolts, 1/2-inch bolts that we're going to use to install the American axle plate onto the rear end. So we've got our bolt, lock washer, and flat washer, and then we're going to apply the red Loctite that's provided onto each bolt. Also in the kit, if you do have the metric bracket, we also have the metric bolts, lock washers, and flat washers for that style axle as well. Okay, we want to make sure the surface is clean on the rear end before we put our plate up there. Okay, we're installing our axle plate with our bolts here, with our locks and flats and Loctite. Get these all started good first before you tighten any of them. Now we're going to go ahead and torque our axle plate bolts to 120 foot-pounds. Okay, on our frame bracket side, we've got 2 different brackets in the kit here. We've got the earlier version that has the holes in the frame rail, and then some of the later ones do not have holes, and we're going to pick up the 2 bolts on the rebound bumper on the side of the frame here on the passenger side frame rail. It looks like this is the bracket that we're going to be using on this coach. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and remove the 2 bolts that are holding the rebound bumper on the passenger side frame. Go ahead and put our bracket in place. Install the new flat washers and the original nut. We want to tighten up these bolts on the frame bracket to about 75 foot-pounds. Okay, now as we get ready to install our track bar, we're going to go ahead and prepare our bolts. We've got 2 3/4-inch bolts with 3/4-inch flat washers. We always want to make sure the flat washer captures the outside of the bushing. If you have the bolt in place without the washer, it can pull through, the bushing can pull over the head of the bolt, so you always want to have the bushing captured by the washer. We'll go ahead and put a little dab of red Loctite on our bolts for extra insurance. We do have a self-locking nut to keep it from coming loose as well. Okay, now when you're ready to install your track bar, you want to make sure you have the wheels on the ground, the weight on the vehicle, and on a pretty level surface. As we install our track bar, you notice that one end is adjustable, and we're going to put that on the frame side to where it's easier to make our adjustment. We want to put a washer on each side of that bushing. Install our nut on the back side. And then we'll adjust this end to where the bolt lines up. Okay, we're going to go ahead and run our 3/4-inch bolts down with the air wrench, and then we'll torque them 150 to 180. We're going to go ahead and Loctite our jam nut and tighten it up. This jam nut you won't be able to get a torque wrench on, but you want to give it a good hard pull. We're looking for about 150 to 200 foot-pounds on that. Other than the test drive, this completes the installation on the SS401. This is John from Supersteer. Thank you for your time.